All right, West Coast, as part of our Pacific Rim Hospice Society fundraising radiothon, I'm joined by Thereses Bouchard, who is one of the volunteers for many years now, the hospice volunteer coordinator for the Pacific Rim Hospice Society, getting a little insight from her perspective about how people's help today could help hospice. So Therese, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about how you became involved in hospice a number of years ago now?
It was, yes, a dozen years ago at least, I can't remember. I've always been curious about human beings and human mysteries, and wanted basically to demystify death a little bit more, because even though it's getting a little bit less of a myth in our society, it's there's still lots of taboos around it, and I wanted to become more familiar so I can be more ready for my own death and the death of people I love, and be helpful to people who are going through that process at the same time.
So how did you come having that thought in your head about wanting to learn more, maybe become more in touch with the process of the end of life? How did you come to hospice specifically as a place to experience that?
Well, hospice was just beginning at that time. When I got involved, there were a group of ladies that went to Port Alberni to do a training, because there was no training here then.
Yeah.
I knew them and they told me about it, and it sounded like a great opportunity, so I came on board.
So when you first started, what sort of things did you do as a hospice volunteer?
We went to visit same as now. We went to visit people in the hospitals and in their homes, but it was a much smaller. There was no. We didn't have an office. We didn't have an ED. We didn't have funds, so it was a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over the years, your role has changed. Now you help coordinate other volunteers. From that perspective, how can you see additional funds involved in hospice being helpful? You said you had to travel for training in the past, you didn't have other facilities. Are there things that have become a lot easier to manage now that hospice is a little more established?
A lot of training opportunities, which we're able to offer to volunteers and which hospice is able to pay for. And just in that way, it just expanded it in a beautiful way. We're now able sometimes to have facilitators come here to offer the trainings, which we weren't able to do in the past. We have a library that is expanding, and so having the radiothon is really helpful to get all these. It's money that's reinvested directly in the community, so it's every little bit helps.
So in your time in hospice, you said you came here to kind of demystify death and get a little more insight into your own life. Have you accomplished that? Do you find your time with, well, maybe accomplished it to a certain degree. I guess that's a long process.
It's an ongoing process.
But you must obviously get a lot of fulfillment out of your time working.
I do. I find it fascinating, and I just did recently a week-long training in Victoria, and it's such a vast field, and it keeps changing as well, which is beautiful. So there's always something to learn, and I think I learn certainly as much, if not more, from all the clients that I get to meet as I do from the trainings, and so it's a beautiful spiral, continuing.
Over the years of doing this hospice radiothon, some of the clients that I've been able to interview and the volunteers and stuff, it's been a really neat process. And
yeah.
Really, you say fascinating. It is kind of fascinating to perceive the world and in those potentially super stressful times. So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it does too is for us that are healthy out there happening is realize how precious life is, and that we're here, we're not sick, we're healthy, and let's enjoy every single moment of it.